everyone, I'm here with John Paul. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is John Paul. I'm a pharmacist, but also an avid voracious reader. I have a book talk account known as JP Reads. I love to talk about black books and black authors and just scream about them. So yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking a bit more about that in the course of the episode. I was first introduced to you when I went to the Afro-Caribbean Network's
hmm
Journey to Medicine
hmm
conference last year, which was really great. So
hmm
at that point, you were still a student, but
Yeah,
now you're a pharmacist. But I was wondering if you
yeah.
can tell us a bit about your journey into university and what your experience at university was like for you.
So my journey to university was very much, I guess, supported. So I actually started off, well, I actually applied for medicine, didn't get in. And then I was like, I want to do something. I don't not sure if I want to wait another year. So many things. I was like, oh, let's just try pharmacy. Drugs are kind of cool, not in that way, but drugs are cool. Their structures are interesting. So I thought, yeah, why not? Let's give it a go. So yeah, did the 4 year degree. It was hard, obviously being in the pandemic where second and third year was mainly online. So and second and third year in pharmacy is mainly where, or my university anyway, was where we got most of our placements. So all of that was gone. It was very quite hard, but I passed first time, which is great, just to kind of get it over and done with. Because then we have to do our training year, which was when I met you. I was doing my training. I think I had probably my I started in July. I think I met you in November, October. I want to say. I think it was then. Yeah, so I was a few months in, and yeah, that was a whirlwind. I went to Newcastle to do my training, so I did a split GP community, and then again did the exam, passed as well, and I am here. I'm qualified, currently working in a GP practice as a clinical pharmacist, and clinical pharmacy is changing every day. It's a moving landscape, so there's so many amazing opportunities. But yeah, I think that's a nice little catch up from where we last left off.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you said you want to do medicine. Would you
hmm
ever consider doing graduate entry medicine, or do you
Oh,
think you'll stick with pharmacy?
I think I'm sticking with pharmacy. I think I'm all studied out for the time being anyway. And I also feel like with the way that pharmacists are moving, they're trying to make us into more general clinicians, obviously with the independent prescribing and teaching us the clinical skills that medics sort of learn in your years. They're kind of making us kind of catch up post our qualification. So I feel like at some point, obviously there's less scope in terms of becoming, for example, a surgeon or like an OBGYN or like, for example, we will be able to become general clinicians at some point, which is kind of what I would have wanted to do, I think. So I'm kind of getting there, I guess, taking an alternative route, taking a few more steps. But yeah,
No, I suppose you still get a lot of the patient facing role with
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
pharmacy. And if you do enjoy kind of the drugs aspect of pharmacy as well, you get that. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds because you do a lot
Yeah.
of what medics will do. Anyway, obviously, depending
hmm
on what type of doctor you are, but I still think it's probably quite fulfilling still being a
hmm
pharmacist, even not doing
Yeah.
medicine. When you were at university doing your placements, I know it was kind of impacted a bit by COVID and you didn't get perhaps as many placements as you would like. And during your practice now as a pharmacist, have you seen any healthcare disparities amongst the patients?
Definitely yes. On two levels. Obviously being a black man myself, I definitely understand that the health disparity in terms of, um, for example, simple one, hypertension. So many of like our catchment lists are people from African Caribbean backgrounds. Literally just looking at them, it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm recognizing surnames, or you're
Mm.
seeing the box ticked off Black African bag. You're like, damn, there's just a lot. Um, and most of them are just like gone untreated for some time, and I feel like that's probably the first level of disparity I've probably seen. And going further, one thing I've noticed recently is the difference between men's health and women's health. I feel like a lot of the time, it's simple when it's HRT. HRT is always out of stock. Like it's just never in stock, and it's so frustrating to for the women that I talk to who are like, oh yeah, like I need my HRT is out of stock, and obviously in this case it's to dealing with menopause. Obviously, they just feel like no, I need something like it keeps me feeling good, it keeps me feeling better about myself, it keeps me feeling okay. Some is kind of things I've heard people say, but we can kind of see in the background that the same energy isn't put into women's health as it is in men's health.
Mm.
And I've only been in general practice for I think 4 or 5 months, but that those two have been screaming at me, screaming at me. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. And I think there is kind of a big push at the moment for women to come forward if they are experiencing the symptoms of menopause,
Mm,
because I think it's been stigmatized for a long
yeah.
time. And it can have a really big impact on women's lives as well. It can cause
Yeah.
anxiety, depression, brain fog, as well as all the physical symptoms. So
Exactly.
it's such a shame when you hear that those sorts of medications that are really
Hmm.
necessary are out of
On.
stock. And then
Yeah.
health,
Hmm.
you might have, medications that are in stock all the time.
All the time. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. Like even I mean, the good thing now is, for example, they have Gina, which is available over the counter.
Mm,
So it's estradiol, so one can just buy it over the counter. It is pricey, but I feel like it's a good step forward in terms of removing that kind of appointment waiting time in order to get something. You just see a pharmacist, check a few questions, tick a few boxes, and then you can grab HRT over the counter essentially.
yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. I've heard anecdotally, I'm not sure if you've experienced this, that there are shortages as well of like ADHD medications. Is that
Oh,
where
oh
you
yes,
are? Or...
all the time, all the time. So, um, obviously, the way it works is that with a shared care agreement, the consultants will prescribe it, and then we, as the general practice, will continue the treatment. So,
Mm,
when, for example, Licks, dexamphetamine went out of stock, methylphenidate went out of stock, people will come to us saying, "Oh, my meds are out of stock. Like, what do we do?" And people saying, "Can we change it?" And with shared care agreements, most of the times you can't even change doses. So, for example, people be like, "Oh, I'm on 17 milligrams, but can I go to 60?" The GPs most likely, even the pharmacist, would be like, "Oh, I don't know if we can do that because under the agreement, we can't do anything." And then it's now a long route to go back to, for example, Psychiatry UK or ADHD 360 to get everything changed. It's costly. And that's something that I think in the last 3 months that I've experienced heavy, because most of my phone calls have me having to say, "I'm so sorry, we can't do anything, unfortunately. You have to go back to your prescriber." And it's just, it's long, very, very long.
yeah,
Yeah.
just jumping through a lot of hoops, I feel like, for
Literally, yeah,
patients.
there's so much red tape, yeah. Yeah,
I
to
feel
kind of
like for
cut.
patients as well, it leads to some patients will say, well, I'll just try and titrate my dose myself.
But yeah, that happens all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
which makes things more complicated in the long run. Because now, when it comes to taking histories and stuff, you're thinking, "Oh, but in 2018 it said you won this, but now you're on this. Now you have to kind of make everything add up." It's yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
um, Leading on from that, then, what role do you think pharmacists can play in overcoming some of these healthcare disparities?
Um, I think because they do coin us as a drug specialist, I feel like we can definitely um from a ground level, from a basic level, I say we can definitely improve knowledge around medications and knowledge around guidelines changing and giving doctors, I guess, the heads up in terms of, okay, this has changed, by the way. So, like these are the new guidelines, do this. And also with pharmacists becoming prescribers, there's more scope for people to talk to them and to actually be prescribed these things. And I guess knowing how to maneuver around these shortages and try their best to kind of make sure that it may not be what you want or what you're used to, but it's something new we can try. We can help you as you try this new medication. From a higher up level, I guess, in terms of changing legislations and stuff and kind of putting out new things out there and talking to people to kind of get things put in place. Because the best people who know what they're doing are people who've seen it face to face, not these far away pharmaceutical companies who just are not really
Yeah.
sure what's going on. It would be really nice to kind of have that continuity from the ground level up in terms of pharmacists just kind of talking a bit more and encouraging people.
Great. I think, yeah, you've opened my eyes to some of the things. I didn't even know HRT was kind of in short supply,
Mm,
especially
happens
given
all the
there is
time.
such a push for people to
Exactly. Yeah.
we need the match up, don't we, of
Yeah.
the things. So another question, this is kind of my last question about your work as a pharmacist. So what advice would you give to students aspiring to be a pharmacist?
Oh, my advice would be to stay open minded. Um, I think with the way that, like I said, primary care is changing, for example, we are talking about pharmacy first. Community pharmacists are becoming independent prescribers, and what that means is that they can do a lot of the drug changes and drug prescribing just over the counter in their consultation room.
Mm.
And some people say, "Oh, I don't want to do community pharmacy because it's kind of man numbing," which is something that I said. But now that you have an IP, things could be more flexible. We're kind of redirecting and signposting people from the reception desk to community pharmacies because they can help. Um, and also, my second piece of advice would be like once you qualified and if you start in community pharmacy, don't be afraid to jump to hospital or to jump to primary care or to move back and forth. Like both of the pharmacists that I work with, because there's three of us and I'm the newly qualified, they've worked in all three, um, community GP and hospital. So like gain the experience and be open to new things, and you never know where it can get you.
It's great. And what, so I know, have you practiced? I know you're practicing as a GP pharmacist now. Do you think you'll stay in that role? Do you prefer that role compared to
Mm.
hospital or community, or where do you kind
I
of see
th-
yourself going?
I think my goal, I don't really know what the future holds, but let's say if I do stay in pharmacy, I think I want to be an overall clinician because I feel like I have a good bedside manner. I think I'm good, very personable, likable with patients, and I would love to stay in that kind of heavily patient facing role.
Mm.
So, for example, I love what they've done with nurse practitioners. So, AMPs are amazing. Like, we have a vast nurse practitioner where I work, and she's on call like a doctor. She just knows what she does. She's just good at what she does. And that's exactly where I want
Yeah,
pharmacists to get to, where it doesn't matter if you're a drug specialist. No, you're literally a clinician. Anything and everything comes your way, and you're called to deal with it. That's kind of where I would like to be um, at some point in my career if I do decide to stay in pharmacy.
great. So now you spoke a little bit earlier about your book talk, J3 Reads. So have you always had a love of reading that kind of led
hmm
to your book talk?
Ooh. Yes, I have. So I was that kid that got their books taken away, not their phones. Yeah, my mum would literally avoid WH Smith because she knew that every time I walked by with her, she was going to have to spend £12 on a hardback cover of a book or paperback if she was lucky. Um, I just love to read. It was my escape. It was my thing to do when I came home. I didn't really watch TV. I just preferred to read. Um, so I think naturally people just thought, oh yeah, like he was gonna go into writing. Then I became a pharmacist. I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa, me too. But yeah, I really found my love for reading. I guess. Yeah, it's my safety net. It's my blanket. It's amazing. Yeah.
I think so many people will probably relate to what you just said. Like when we were younger, I was the same. I loved books. I would read a book in a day, and then
Yeah.
kind of as I went through high school and university, it just stopped because you just
Yeah.
feel like you don't have the time.
No time. Yeah.
My attention span, TikTok's ruined my attention
Oh my
span as
gosh.
well.
Yes.
And I just stopped. But then this year, I've made it one of my resolutions. I'm going to try and read more this
mm,
year, not just factual non-fiction. I want to read some fiction. But and I
hmm
really enjoyed it. And I was like, why did I stop? Because it's so cool to
Literally.
just take yourself to a different place.
World. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much nicer. And I think, yeah, we all need to read more. I think
Yeah.
it's
I
just
agree.
even just a couple of minutes a day is so good for you and it gives your brain a rest. But I did see when I was driving, I saw a girl walk into school reading a book, and
Oh yes. The world
I
is
was
beginning.
like, yes, we're still doing it. We're still, okay. There's still people who are like that because that used to be me when I was younger.
Yeah. Oh
What
gosh.
made
Yeah.
you decide to start reviewing books on social media then? What kind of pushed you into that?
Ooh. So two things. I think firstly, I want to say my friends. So I used to when I had Snapchat, I used to just do like book reviews on my private story. They said, "Oh my days, you're so good! Like this book is great. Like you make it sound like it's the best thing ever." And then like, why don't you start a TikTok? And I had a TikTok account at that time. It wasn't really anything big. I was just talking nonsense and just up my day to day. And then I stopped for a while because I started training, and it was just too long. And then when I started reading in my fourth year, so this was 2022 January, and I was like, I remember thinking to myself, oh, like the last book I think I ever picked up was like Derek Landy's God Love You Pleasant, I think, and that was ages ago. And then the next book I picked up was by a black author. Her name is Oyinkan Braithwaite. It was My Sister the Serial Killer. And I remember thinking there must be more black authored books, but I couldn't find any. And then so kind of those things with my friends forcing me knowing that there needs to be more black authored recs out there, recommendations, I was like, let's just do it. So I got home one day. I had an account name in mind. I just propped my phone up on my toaster in my studio. I just recorded a video, and then yeah, the journey just starts from there, I guess. Which is it's cool. It's really cool.
Oh, it's nice you had your friends kind of supporting you and pushing you to
Yeah,
do
they
it.
pushed me
I
a
suppose
lot.
it was always there, you doing your little Snapchat reviews. You always kind of wanted to do it, but sometimes you need that push from people to
Hmm.
actually do it and have the confidence to do it as well. That's how I felt when I started my Medic account because I always kind of wanted to, but
Yeah,
you always feel, I think you feel nervous, don't you, that people are going to judge
yeah.
you or they're going to think it's embarrassing. But sometimes you just have to do things that you enjoy and
I know
just
your
take
face is out
that.
there as well. Like it's a lot. Like wow, yeah.
Especially on TikTok, sometimes people can be ruthless on
I
TikTok because
know.
things
Oh
can
my
go
gosh.
viral and then it's
Yeah,
it's
it's
off
out
from
there.
there. What has been the most exciting part of your journey as JP Reads so far? Then, because you've done so
Oh
many
wow.
amazing things. What's been
The
the highlights? I
most
suppose.
exciting thing. I think the most exciting thing has been doing my first ever live event. So, um, it's a book called The Situationship by Taylor Dior Rumble, and I did like a review on it. Murky Books, imprint by Penguin, sent me the book, and I was like, "Cool!" I read the book. I was like, "This book is amazing." Like, I'm triggered. This really speaks to the Black British dating experience. Like, yeah, did a review on it now, and then a few weeks later, I get an email saying, "Oh, the Black British Book Festival, the biggest black book festival in Europe, reached out to me. They're like, "Oh, we're doing an event in Birmingham. We need someone to interview the author. Would you be down for it? We saw your interview and like we want you." And I was like, I remember reading that thing saying, "Huh?" Like it was at like night. I promise you, it was like 8:50 in the morning or something really early. And I was like, I can't believe this. So I closed the email. I was like, let me get to work and actually focus because like I have patients. I can't just be all over the place. Let me read it
Yeah,
during my break. So I did my first clinic and then I read it again. I was like, this is real. And as I said, yes, I'm going to do this straight away. And when I got to Birmingham and I did the event, I felt that moment, my life changed. Like people were collecting my email, were like, "Oh my God, I've seen you on TikTok." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, stop." But I think from there, especially doing stuff with the Backbench Book Festival, just yeah, shot me up. Yeah,
yeah,
that's probably one of the most coolest things I've done, and it will always, especially Taylor Do. I love her. Yeah, we're cool. I did another event for her recently, a whole full circle event, like full circle thing that came back around, and we did another event, and it was just so cool just to meet with her, talk about her book again in a completely different space. But yeah, that that day did change my life.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear. And it's nice that someone reached out and kind of took the chance to,
Yep.
and you've got to just take those opportunities because sometimes you feel really nervous about doing
Hmm.
things and you're like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? But I think you should always take things and just run with
Do
it and
them.
work it out later.
Yeah.
I just say yes to things and I'm like, right, I'll sort it out
Yeah. I'll
later.
sort out the
Yeah.
logistics will come soon. It's
I'll
fine.
get the time off. I'll figure out how I'll get there, but I'll say yes, and then we'll find out what we're doing later. So that sounds really exciting, and it's great that you've had. I mean, it's great you have the chance to interview an author that you like as well. I
Yeah.
remember I went to a book signing for one of my favorite books ever, and just like meeting the author, and you just like your book
Yeah.
changed my life.
I have to be normal.
Yeah,
Like, not to be creepy, but your book changed my life.
yeah. You know, try not to be like a fangirl and want to ask like everything about
Literally.
all the characters and say, what's their life going to be like when the book's over?
Honestly. Oh gosh. Wow.
How do you make time for your hobbies, and what
Mm,
advice would you give to others regarding this? Because, like we were saying earlier, sometimes it can, once you start your studies, be really hard to balance doing the things that you
mm,
did enjoy. Because sometimes it becomes, for me, it became a bit of a chore, even just to sit down and open a book and read it. Even
mm,
though I knew I would enjoy it, it becomes challenging when you feel like you don't have any time.
mm. So for me, my hobbies, are reading and writing. Taking writing a bit more seriously, but even when it was a hobby, I struggled. And I think the main thing that I did was when I read on my commutes.
Mm-hmm.
Easiest thing to do, just reading your commute, reading my lunch breaks. I don't really watch TV either, so if I have a really bad day, I'm just really stressed, I come home, just set time aside to read. Um, but I think the general thing is if you have a hobby and that you kind of want to get better at it, you have to treat it like a job. And in that sense, I mean like block out time and
Mm.
stick to it. Um, I heard someone say something that really changed my life, especially as a writer. It was like they're like, oh, I think they were talking about their friend. They're like, oh, I had a friend who, someone said they had the friend who was a writer, but they weren't going out, and they're like, oh, where's so and so? And they're like, oh, so and so is writing. They're like, why aren't they out? Like, because like writing's their thing. Like if they like just like you like won't go to work. I mean, sorry, you won't go out because you have work. Sometimes you just can't go out because you're doing your hobby or you're writing. You're trying to get better at it. And I feel like treating writing as like a second job for me or a third job because TikTok is another little job for me as well, and book stuff as well. But treating writing as like another job has really helped me grow as a writer and just get words on the page. So it does take a bit of practice, does take time. Give yourself grace is the main thing that I will say because it isn't easy, especially if you're working a 9 to 5, whatever 9 to 5 job it is. You just want to chill at the end of it. But
Mm.
if you really want to like get good at something, sometimes you just have to block out time and do it. Yeah.
I think kind of the message I've taken from that is just to be consistent. I think
Hmm.
once you become consistent with something, it just becomes a part of your daily routine, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
I'm going to sit down, I'm going to read for 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to write for an hour. And if it just becomes natural to you, it's just as natural as you getting up, eating your breakfast, and it
Literally.
doesn't become a chore because that's just what you do. Like how I get into bed and I sit and scroll on TikTok for an hour. I could very easily just pull out a book instead, but it's
Same.
just that's become natural. So instead, I'm like, right,
Hmm.
I'm going to give myself just a time. I'm going to read a chapter and then that's it. It becomes enjoyable and it
Yeah.
becomes something you look forward to. I would actually look forward to sitting down and reading that chapter, especially when it ends on a cliffhanger. And you're like,
And you're like, oh,
yeah, I
one more
just want to keep
chapter.
reading. Yeah, that was when I was younger. It's like one more chapter, book's done, and it's like 2
And then
a.m.
2 a.m., literally your
Yeah.
eyes are red. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to wake up in fact 4 hours. Oh, yeah.
So whatever
Yeah.
hobby it is, it doesn't necessarily have to be reading, writing, sports. It's important to find time for it because it's a release, it's relaxing, it takes your
Yeah.
mind off. Especially when you're reading something, you're not thinking about the rest of the world. I've got
Yeah.
music playing in my head.
You're insulated. You're literally in your own little world. Yeah. If it's important to you, you got to make it important. Yeah.
Exactly. Finally, are you involved in any other projects or endeavours that you'd like to share with us? Is there anything coming up that you'd like to share?
Ooh. So, um, I am currently, like I said, I'm writing a book, which is cool. Yeah, I am obviously as a pharmacist, one thing I've actually wanted to explore and destigmatize is reframing how we see people who are dependent on drugs and substance misuse
Mhm.
as a whole. I feel like ripping it back to shreds and actually remembering that these people are people is something
Mm.
that I really enjoyed working with my supervisor in Newcastle. So my book takes different elements of myself, black, queer, and then takes my job and takes what things I enjoy for my job and merge them into whole into a story. So that's one thing I'm doing. And it's close to heart. Very much in its baby stages, but I'm excited to see it grow. Think of any other things. I do run a book club for dope readers, really cool. So we're doing events here and there. It's by my friend Q. He started Dope Readers, and I just basically just facilitate the conversations, and it's just an amazing place to just talk about books. So if you're a bookworm and you're in London, it's fantastic. You can find them on Instagram, Dope Readers, and come and talk about books with us. I think that's everything. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Can't wait to see when your book comes out. I'll be purchasing and I'll be reading, I'll
Thank
be
you.
sharing. But I think you make a really interesting point about substance use because I
Mm,
think people do really it's very stigmatized, isn't it, about
mm,
substance abuse. But I think when you realize it's a chemical reaction in your
yeah.
brain, that is what it is at the end of the
Hmm.
day. It stimulates parts of your brain that activate pleasure centers, and that makes you want to do it
Hmm.
more, just the same as any other thing that
Anything.
you
Yeah.
enjoy. but it is so stigmatized. And I think a lot of the time people think it's a choice for you to
Hmm.
become addicted to something. But you try something once and you can become addicted to it.
Yeah,
And I think, yeah, like you said, stripping it back to that, is a person. They're not an addict, they are a person
but yep,
underneath all of
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Is
Hmm.
really interesting. So I'll definitely want to have a
Hmm.
read of that and see what your take on it is. I think it can be
Hmm.
very useful as well for healthcare students and things, because we had a talk when I was in third year, I think,
Hmm.
Paul Hannaford, and he is an ex addict, and he goes into schools and he talks about his past with drug abuse and how it
Hmm.
affected him. And it was really moving what he spoke about. And it really made me think about things differently and stop
Hmm.
having that initial judgment and think, okay, let me think about this person who's
Yeah.
active, not allow
Hmm.
your kind of implicit bias to come through and take it back. And that's been really helpful for me. So I
Hmm.
think he's a really wonderful speaker. I was crying during his
Yeah,
lecture. So
I don't. Yeah, like honestly, like even similar to kind of that, but I think dealing with, for example, pain clinic letters, and
mm,
also talking to the people, you realize that a lot of these situations where they become dependent on drugs is literally because of pain, like they've had an accident or
mm,
they've needed something, and then for one reason or another, they find that it makes them happy and then they continue to take it. Again, like you said, the chemical reaction starts. And like, again, if it's not their fault that they're in pain, no one wants to be in pain.
no,
But they need something to kind of allow them to do their daily life. And I feel like once we kind of remember that these are, like I said, people who have sadly just had painful experiences, they need some form of pain relief. We can kind of treat them like people. And I feel like the whole way of like pain clinics and just discussing and describing pain will change, and hopefully for the better.
definitely.
Hmm.
Well, I've loved speaking to you this evening. It's been very insightful to hear you want to go and
Same.
read my book. So I think hopefully
Yes,
everyone who listens will just be like, right, I'm actually going to go and pick up a book now because I haven't done it since I was 12. So,
that's the plan. I love that.
where can people find you if they do want to see any of your
Hmm.
reviews or get in touch with you?
So, my TikTok is just at JPRead6. So that's where I post most of my reviews. And my Instagram is John Paul, so JOHNPAUL dot K01. And my email is there if you want to get in touch with me via email. Linktree that has all my other social medias because they're so interesting handles. But those are the two easiest ones that I think you can reach me by.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me.